How do you help a brand who comes to you and maybe their brand identity isn't as polished or fleshed out or as defined as a Yeti or an LL Bean or a Patagonia, and they still want to create captivating imagery that feels authentic?
The first thing I do is I tell them not to hire any models anymore.
And why is that? Why shouldn't a brand hire models?
Well, I mean, a lot of brands think that in order to professionalize their advertising, they need to professionalize every aspect of their advertising. And so the first thing is a model, and then they end up with hair and makeup. They realize that there might be some wrinkles in the clothes, and then they hire a wardrobe stylist. And then they think about a scene, like, well, what are these models going to be doing? Are they going to be at a campfire? They're on a house in the Cape, so maybe we need to find a location in Untuckit. And then before you know it, they've blown their entire annual budget on one shoot. So what I typically say to clients is, we need to create something that's authentic, and we need to work within a budget that you can reproduce several times a year. Like, we really just need a person using the product in a place. And then let's talk about what now is missing from an advertising perspective from there. Well, my point being is, just start with me and my camera. Do you need to review the images? Okay, so now we need a tech. And that costs an additional $800-900 a day. Okay, you want to work with in the middle of the day in bad light. Let's add an assistant just to hold scrims. Okay, you want it to look sunny in every frame. Okay, so now we need another assistant in a lighting package. And then they start to see a la carte what they can afford and what they need. And you start to see the clients kind of find their zone, you know?
Welcome to The Marketing Factor. I'm your host, Austin Dandridge, the CEO of Cobble Hill. And today I'm joined by William Hereford, who's one of my favorite photographers hailing from my hometown of Charlottesville, Virginia, whose distinct visual style has shaped campaigns for iconic American brands, including LL Bean, Untuckit, Le Creuset, Tumi, Bonobos, Sperry, and his editorial work has showed up in Travel and Leisure, Food and Wine, Garden and Gun, just to name a few. Will, thank you so much for joining The Marketing Factor.
Thank you for having me, Austin. I'm happy to be here.
You were just telling me you are down in Patagonia right now. I'm super jealous.
I am in the far deep middle of nowhere. I don't know. I think 3 or 4 years ago, I did Francis Mallman's last cookbook, which is they're my favorite assignments right now as cookbooks, because they're it's kind of the last lasting vestige of what it means to be an old school photographer. And then what I mean by that is you get to shoot food, you get to shoot portraits, and you get to shoot landscape and details. And so it reminds me, when I shoot a cookbook, it reminds me of what I thought being a photographer would be before I became a photographer. And anyways, I shot Francis's last cookbook while I was in Uruguay. I met my wife. She was working for Francis for 10 years. And we changed my flight, and I stayed down there, and we fell in love. And now we have a Uruguayan daughter, and I live down there full time. And so I'm currently at Francis's house in Patagonia on a little vacation with my wife and our daughter.
That's amazing. I've been to Uruguay. I went to Punta del Este, which is, I don't know
super,
if you super touristy.
This was cocktails.
Yeah,
lots.
It was
yeah.
We were in Argentina, and then I think we took a boat over, and then drove down the coast. It's so beautiful, and in Uruguay, it's such a sleeper country that I feel like a lot of people miss.
Yeah, sleeper hit. It's 3 million people, and half of them live in the city, the capital city, Montevideo, and the other half are kind of scattered around the country. And it's I don't know, for me, I lived 15 years in New York City, and when my wife and I met, the first half of my career was dominated with cocktail parties and figuring out who's who and who could get you what campaign. And when my wife and I fell in love and we realized we were going to have a family in the future, we tried living in New York. I had an apartment in New York City and in a cabin up in upstate New York. And we would go back to Uruguay, and it just dawned on us that was where I wanted to spend the second half of my career and the second half of my life. And so that's where we are. And I thought it would be pretty detrimental to my career to be living so far away, but so I kind of hid it from my clients, and my agent wanted me to be, I don't want to say that she wanted me to be sneaky, but she wanted to make sure that I talked a lot about New York City, because my business is still run out of New York City. And then it just, the clients are used to me flying from Scotland to Alabama, then from Alabama to Miami, and Miami to LA. And so no one seems to really care. The only thing I've maintained is that all the flights are billed as if I was flying from New York. So I don't charge any of the clients for this international transfer. All the flights are usually originate in New York City, and then I go other places.
Yeah, describe, for those that haven't seen your work. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have seen your work because it shows up in all sorts of ad campaigns, and it's all through all the great, travel and food magazines. But how do you describe the type of photography and the type of photographer you are?
Good question. I think that if you stand back and you look at the different genres of photography, I probably fall into a travel category. The irony of being a travel photographer in 2025 is that there's not really that many travel magazines around. We still have the classics like Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast Traveler, but there's just, I think that when I was up and coming, and probably the decade or two before me, there was tons of travel content. And so what it meant to be a travel photographer in 1990 was that you exclusively shot travel photography, like National Geographic. I think what it means in 2025 is when you look at my campaigns and you look at my work in general, it typically, the place that we are in is the subject matter. And so I get lots of lifestyle outdoorsy campaigns for different clients. But typically the clients are taking me someplace, and the backdrop for the campaign is a part of the story. Whether they say, oh, we're in Alaska, or they don't, and Alaska is just the backdrop, I approach the models and the clothing and the subject matter as if I'm shooting a travel story. And so that's how I would describe my work. I typically shoot a lot of different angles of each subject. Or how do I say this? I'm usually framing a detail. If let's say it's a campaign for Tom Beckby, who's a great client of mine and a great friend of mine, Ratcliffe Menge. If I'm shooting something for him, I'm typically shooting a detail on the clothing, and then a portrait where the subject's looking at the camera, and then something that's a bit more full body where the subject's moving through space, and then pulling back even further to showcase that they're in a quail woods in Alabama or something, to create a sense of place within the campaign.
When I think of when I was starting, because I was a photographer up in New York too, it was a lot of assisting, a lot of kind of coming along for the ride and, setting up lighting or helping just get lunch or something like that.
Yeah, coffees.
Yeah. I'd love to know kind of what were your kind of formative experiences that kind of shaped how you wanted to define your style? And did you have mentors?
Yeah. Yes, I had mentors, but I would say that what's unique about my journey is that I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, as you mentioned. My father went to the Darden School of Business, and so I'm not trying to say that we grew up with a lot of money, but what I am trying to say is that making money was an important part of what it meant to have a career, right? And so when I got out of college with a history major out of Bates College, but I was very concerned about being able to make money. I wasn't a starving artist that found photography as a means of making money. I approached photography as an entrepreneur. And so I'm 40 years old now, and now I'm pretty booked. My months are pretty solid. I don't have a lot of trouble finding clients, but at 40 years old now, living in a small country where I don't have as much overhead, it's only now that I'm really thinking about what do I want to say with my camera? And it's a pretty intense existential drama playing in my mind. What photograph should live on a wall, and what does it mean to take pictures without clients? And so to answer your question, I do have mentors, Gordon Parks being a huge mentor of mine, Eugene Smith, and they're kind of these old Life magazine photographers where they would live in a place and photograph that place for a really long period of time. What I'd say about my career as a professional photographer is that I work very fast, and clients love that. I'm able to light things very quickly, and I approach the projects as a team member and not as a egocentric artist. And clients love that, and that's one of the reasons I've maintained a pretty steady workflow since my mid-20s. But yeah, I worked for a guy named Chris Kramer, wonderful lifestyle, kind of, I would say he's a fashion photographer first, but then he did a lot of work for Gap and Target. And so we had big sets, and watching him work, how he worked with the clients, how he managed his budgets, he was a huge mentor for me as an entrepreneur. And now at 40, for the first time, I'm in with the artificial intelligence. I just am like, well, what does it mean to be a photographer? And these are the questions that I'm asking myself every day. And what is great for me is that it makes me want to take more pictures, not less pictures.
Yeah, that's cool to have that crisis. I mean, I have to say we're the same age, and I go through those same dilemmas for advertising. And I think that it's only natural that I was just I was just on a panel, and we were giving a talk about burnout. And I was reflecting on getting started in my career and how much of it involved just like working harder than anyone else, like hustling, like working, the weekends and working late nights and getting a project done. And now, as I've, entered this later stage of my career, I realize that you have to have this balance too of free time for yourself, to get inspiration, to stay inspired and stay what's true to yourself, and kind of continue to evolve as an artist and as a business person. And I think that that's kind of what you're reflecting on too there, and what you're probably going through.
Yeah, I have burnout. I definitely have burnout. I mean, I've been taking the same photograph now for almost a decade, over and over again. And I don't mean for anyone watching that's thinking literally, I don't mean the exact same photograph, but I've entered a restaurant and done a story on a chef as many times, I don't know how many times now. I've gone to a place and had to wake up in the morning and find the landscape. And it might sound like I'm complaining about a dream job. And in some ways I am, and in some ways I'm not. I mean, I guess I'm excited that we're only 40 and I have time to take photographs for myself, that and that at the end of the day, I still love my job, but I've just gotten so efficient at it that I'm having trouble remembering one campaign from the next, and I would say the burnout is less like it. I'm not annoyed with the clients, and I'm not annoyed with the assignments, and I feel good doing a good job, but I'd say that I'm missing the landmarks in my life that I had when I was younger. It's like, oh, this is the first time I've taken this kind of photograph. And oh my gosh, it's a first, transatlantic flight. And it's blending together now. And there's this part of me that's searching for those moments that just, you never forget them,
What do you think that's missing in the up and coming photographer of now, who can get generally a pretty great shot with an iPhone, or a client is more interested in user generated content or behind the scenes than they are of a sleek looking editorial style photograph? Is it evolved?
I think it's evolved. I think the average Joe is a better photographer than they were in 1995. I'm completely fine with it. It doesn't, I mean, I don't, I'm not worried about it at all. Maybe if I was 25 and I still had that arrogant feel, at 25, you're super cocky and you're trying to figure out why you're better than everyone else. And at middle age now, I'm fine with where I am in my career. And I'm fine with the fact that there's folks that are more driven and more talented than me. And so I have a hard time answering that question because I don't really care. But what I do know is that I am hired not to take good photos in good conditions, but I'm hired to take good photos in bad conditions. And that's just the reality of why I think I'm just going to keep getting booked, is that here's a memorable story. We were shooting last year in Alaska for Ella Bean, and Ella Bean loves Alaska for their fall shoots because even during the summer you can get snow in the background. And the last day it was miserable, and we had to use, it was like raining, and there was a bit of ice, and there was wind blowing up this easy up tent, and there's like 8 people anchored holding the easy up tent down. And I made it look like it was, sunny. And would I rather go out on a beautiful lake when the sun's rising and just hit bangers? Yes, but that's not really why I've made a living doing this. And so the people you're mentioning, I think that there's an opportunity for brands to say, like, we'll just shoot in the morning and we'll use this person, and we'll only shoot for these first 3 hours, and their budget, their day rate matches our budget, and we don't need to hire someone like Will Hereford. And I'm okay with that, but the vast majority of brands need to shoot at least 10 hours a day, and the light's not great in the middle of the day.
Yeah. Do you find that budgets are completely different now than when you started?
Yes, but we were greedy. I'm pleased with how much money I make. I'm pleased with the life it affords me. But there was a time and place when photographers were magic creators of art, imagery. I mean, they held the keys to the castle. And with digital photography, that's gone away. And so, yes, like, I know that I share some clients with my old boss, Chris Kramer, and I know I have an idea of what he was making. And I think I probably make 10% of that, and so, yes, the budgets have hit rock bottom, but I mean, I'm very pleased with the life that we have and the money that we make. And there's this thing in the world that you probably know as well as anyone, and it's called creative capital. And creative capital is, $1 of creative capital is much bigger than $1 of, liquid capital. And so this job has afforded me the ability to travel amazing places and meet wonderful people. And I manage my life. I manage my schedule. I'm the boss of my own life, and that's a great deal of freedom, And so no matter how jaded I get, I remember how in control I am, and it's a pretty great gig.
You find it easier now with technology to translate the experiences that you're having to compelling brand imagery, or put it differently, are you able to create more and think less about the technical aspect of what you're doing and focus more on the emotional aspect of the photography?
The technology, yes, the technology is quite literally different, very, very different, but it's the same. It's a box with a shutter and a lens on it. And so, I mean, I shoot, my personal work now is 8x10 large format film. It's the same. It takes longer. It's easier to screw it up, but it's the same process, So, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think that the cameras have made better photographers, to be honest with you. Perhaps like the difference between a 1 and a 6, people can get to 6 much faster than they could before, but the difference between a 6 and a 10, it's the same. It's the same as it was when Richard Avedon was shooting, shooting on a medium format in studio. But what I will say is that with the hours I've spent working, with having shot the same, as I said, I'm shooting the same kind of picture over and over again, I'm definitely better at it. I'm definitely a much better photographer. And one thing I'll say about having shot now for 15 years straight is that it feels good to be better, but there's a melancholy that comes with knowing the product, knowing the outcome before you've taken the frame. There's something exciting about the ability to screw up. There's something exciting about there being a lot on the line, and you look around and there's lots of people watching you, and every hour costs the client a lot of money, and then hitting a home run, and that's kind of gone. But for the sake of the clients, the photographs are better, and that comes from having spent so much time doing it. I don't think that answered your question, but that the cameras aren't all that much better than they were when I was 25.
Do you find that clients are wanting more, video content now, or behind the scenes content from the shoots that you go on, and is that something that you are
Yeah,
interested in and deliver that?
and I deliver. My agent's watching; she's gonna roll her eyes. I deliver the bare minimum. So yes, I can do it. And I did it at a professional level 10 years ago. If you go down a rabbit hole, you'll see I've done, kind of monster campaigns with Thomas Keller or cookware ads where I was the director. And when a client requires it, they have two options. They either are a friend of mine, like I've learned to know them personally. Tom Beckby is an example of that. I mean, he asks me every once in a while, and because he's such a wonderful friend of mine, I'm happy to oblige. And so I'm either doing them a favor, or I'm saying no, or it's my rate goes up so much it's cost prohibitive. I mean, I'm a photographer, and I don't know. I mean, maybe one day it'll be the end of my career, but I'm a real photographer. I'm not a photographer.
Yeah.
I don't want to shoot video, and I don't know. And that I think that hopefully there's still clients out there that want a real photographer, and they want a real cinematographer, and they want a real director.
Right.
And maybe I lose money because that's my perspective, but that's what I think I am, and that's where my mind is. And I think that if you want to hire someone who's a photographer, hire me. And if you want to hire someone who's good at everything, hire someone who's good at everything. And I have a great deal of respect for folks that are storytellers, and they don't care what the medium is. They don't care if they're sketching on a piece of paper, they're doing stop motion animation with a stills camera, or they've got a $1 million budget with an Alexa. Like, I respect those people too, but I'm a photographer.
What do you think? I always think about Patagonia as like a great brand, from everything from product design to catalogs to their photography to the videos that they've shot. What do you think makes that? Because I always try to describe it as a feeling, right?
Yeah.
But what is it that makes Patagonia, or now even Yeti, right? What makes those brands so unique and so special?
Well, I mean, I did like a little thing for Yeti once. I just basically connected with their marketing person, and they gave me some free kit. But so that's my disclaimer. So neither of them are really a client of mine. And that question I get asked that question a lot, and I have a spiel. And I want to say that maybe I'm wrong when I say this, because I know that they do spend money on marketing, but Yeti and Patagonia are special because they are so beloved that they can use consumer generated imagery for their campaigns. Maybe there's someone out there getting a huge Patagonia campaign. I don't know about it, so I don't want to misspeak, but the folklore about those two clients is that they are so beloved, that they don't necessarily need to spend that much money on advertising. I say this thinking of, there's a great photographer named Nick Kelly. I don't know if he's been on your show. Wonderful photographer. I know that he shoots for them, so I'm sure that they're spending some money here and there. But when you create a product that becomes a part of your lifestyle, it becomes a part of your identity because of the way you use it and how often you use it, I think the marketing takes care of itself, And I think when you see clients spending a lot of money on marketing, and it doesn't something doesn't feel right, it's because they have a brand identity problem.
Yeah.
I think if the product goes out there, you should be seeing it everywhere without spending a dollar, and then you can spend some money catering to the imagery that's already out there to add to the consumer generated imagery. But yes, that's why those brands are so special, is because people live in those clothes and people use Yeti coolers as if it's an extension of their homes.
How do you help a brand who comes to you and maybe their brand identity isn't as polished or fleshed out or is defined as a Yeti or an LL Bean or a Patagonia, and they still want to create captivating imagery that feels authentic?
Well, if that happens all the time, the first thing I do is I tell them not to hire any models anymore.
Why don't you hire? Why shouldn't a brand hire models?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna just let's make some assumptions about the client you're talking about. Let's assume the client is in their 4th year of existing, that they have a pretty decent following, and let's assume the product's pretty good, and let's assume the product has something to do with the outdoors. That would be in my wheelhouse for a client. There is a lot of brands think that in order to professionalize their advertising, they need to professionalize every aspect of their advertising. And so the first thing is a model, and then they end up with hair and makeup. So they model, hair and makeup, and then they realize that there might be some wrinkles in the clothes, and then they hire a wardrobe stylist. And then they think about a scene, like, well, what are these models going to be doing? Are they going to be at a campfire? Are they going to be, they're on a house in the Cape, so maybe we need to find a location in Untuckit. And then before you know it, they've blown their entire annual budget on one shoot. And so what I typically say to clients is, we need to create something that's authentic, and we need to work within a budget that you can reproduce several times a year, right? And you'd be surprised how often I get pushback, because there's usually somebody internally in their team that's like, no, we have to do this specific thing. So what I usually try to do is remove all the bells and whistles from what they already have in their brain. And I try to explain to them that, like, we really just need a person using the product in a place. And then let's talk about what now is missing from a brand, from an advertising perspective from there. And they say, okay, well, Untuckit is a client of mine, or I'm not shooting for them right now. But anyways, when Untuckit first started working for me, or working with me, the shirts are worn untucked. And there's this thing, I think they call it the sail, but the bottom of the shirt needed to line up perfectly. And that was a major concern in the photographs, is that if the shirt spread, the shirt doesn't look good untucked, right? And that was very important to them. And so my point being is, start with just a camera and a person and the product, and then start adding in based on what the brand requires. And one, you get your budget smaller, and two, you just aren't forcing anything. Does that answer your question? I'm a bit long-winded, but
I love that.
that's what I usually say, is just start with me and my camera. Do you need to review the images? Okay, so now we need a tech, and that costs an additional $800-900 a day. Okay, you want to work with in the middle of the day in bad light? Let's add an assistant just to hold scrims. Okay, you want it to look sunny in every frame. Okay, so now we need another assistant in a lighting package. And then they start to see a la carte what they can afford and what they need, and you start to see the clients kind of find their zone.
Yeah. What makes a great creative brief? We're always, we do digital advertising, so we're running the ads that you see on Instagram,
Yeah.
and we're helping brands with their email designs. We're always asking them for more content, right? What we get tasked a lot of times, well, can you guys help us come up with a creative brief? And so I'm always, our designers are thinking about where they're going to overlay text on a photo or something, which is probably not something you want to hear, but that's how they think about that. And I'm thinking more, okay, seeing, feeling, what's the emotion we were trying to convey? When you get a creative brief for an assignment, what makes you say, wow, this is awesome, this is perfect, I know exactly what to do? And what are maybe like the things that are left out sometimes that you feel like maybe make it a little harder?
Okay, that's a great question. Um, a creative brief that I like. Okay, so let's just assume here, for the sake of your question, that I'm not in Patagonia shooting someone fly fishing in the setting sun. That I'm shooting something that it's my job to make it look good, right? And when it's your job to make something look good in a hard location, what's really hard is when the creative brief is shoot whatever inspires you. And and kind of, I don't want to throw. I'm not going to mention any clients or any instances, but you kind of look at them and you're like, we're on a soccer field, in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't want to fucking shoot this, right? And so, what that's a creative brief I hate, is when you give me subpar, a subpar scene, a subpar place. You didn't want to wake up for the sunrise or the sunset, and then you tell me to shoot whatever inspires me. I hate that. What I like is, if you're going to give me something that it's difficult to work with, you're really specific, right? So we want every frame backlit. We want every frame soft front light. We want every frame this way. We want to shoot it 3/4, because my job is to deliver what you need. And when the setting is difficult to work with, the more parameters you give me, the better I can deliver for you. And so, a creative brief that's very specific about, not like just images of people that inspire you. You wouldn't imagine how many creative briefs I get, like, of like a guy in a tuxedo drinking a cocktail and we're shooting outside on the beach, and it's like the creative brief looks really good, but it gives me no information,
Mm,
So,
yeah.
creative brief that is thinking about me as a technical person, providing a document, and you tell me within the constraints you give me what you want it to look like. That's what I like.
Yeah. What about like, I think a lot about how people consume content, right? Everyone consumes no, very I still find myself leaping through a magazine every now and then, but it's rare and rare that I have the time to do that. Photography books, much more enticing. A magazine that I read all the time is the Surfer's Journal. And I feel like what's great about the Surfer's Journal is the photography is just stunning. It evokes a certain emotion for me. And it almost feels like the dopamine fix that you get from scrolling on Instagram, right? How do you think about Instagram, TikTok, any sort of social platforms now? How do you think about how photography influences them?
Well, how do they influence photography is like how I think about it, maybe.
Mm.
I mean, I'm addicted to all of that. And I have a great little thing called a brick where I can turn off my social media because I'm so addicted to it. But I would say that Instagram, has influenced photography in that you're scrolling and you need to understand what a photograph is really quickly. So, like, within a fraction of a second, you need to understand what you're looking at to grab someone's attention. If it's kind of like, and that's really sad in my opinion. So you think of a photographer like Joel Merowitz, a famous street photographer, and what's so beautiful about his work is that you look at the photograph and there's so much going on. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo book from when we were kids. You can find Waldo, but then there's all this stuff going on, and it makes you think about what's on the outside of the frame, and that doesn't really, that imagery, in my opinion, doesn't typically get a lot of love on Instagram. What gets a lot of love on Instagram is the rule of thirds, where the subject is got a hard light on them, or a perfect backlight, but where your eyes just go whoop, and you know exactly what to look at, and then you decide if you're going to hover on it, and then you decide if you're going to click into the profile, and then you're going to decide if you're going to look through more of the profile, and so I find that Instagram in many ways has influenced the way we take photographs as professionals and as amateurs, and from a marketing perspective as well. Less than photography has influenced those platforms.
What about like stories? When you think of stories and how photographers or brands use stories, how do you think the story format affects photography? It feels to me like stories, whenever I'm looking at Instagram and I see a story that feels branded or like an editorial shot, I'll just click through it because I don't want to look at. I'm more interested in like behind the scenes
Yeah.
or what my
Yeah.
friend's doing, or if it's surfing, it's like uh, something
Yeah.
in the space there.
I'm just so over it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so. I mean, like the irony of all of this, and maybe it works. Maybe yeah, I don't think it's true for marketing agents. The irony for me is like as I've stopped caring as much, there's been an increase in interest in what I'm doing. But to answer your question, yeah, like I think that the stories part of Instagram is really like the this. It's like it's the backside of your resume or something. It's your mullet. It's like the party in the back. It's like it's the non-professional facing part of your digital life. And so I've never. I'm behind on the Instagram now, despite the fact that I was there when Instagram opened and started using it. I don't remember what year it was, but like I'm a old dude with Instagram. I I've not done the reels. I've not utilized the all the things that I can utilize to get more clients. But what I have done is not endorsed products really, and just continue to be who I am. And so my what I think is a pretty minuscule following for a photographer who's 40 years old, my 18,500 followers are used to that. And so I don't have to keep up with what they're interested in. It's like just like the advice I gave the clients, it's like maintain a budget and a production that you can keep doing. Because if you go and you blow it all in one campaign, you're screwed for the next campaign if it fails. So do what you can and then keep doing it.
You think there's like a career path for a photographer who isn't active on Instagram, who has low followers or just doesn't care or just doesn't even.
Well, I know that there is because I follow competition of mine that are like wildly talented photographers that don't have a lot of followers. So yes, the I mean, having an epic Instagram following, which I would consider like a six-figure Instagram following, it gets tricky what your job is thereafter because I think people just start like slamming money at you, and that's probably a pretty tempting thing. And so would I like to have 100,000 Instagram followers? Sure, but I don't want to have 100,000 Instagram followers because they're obsessed with what clothing we're putting on our baby or something.
Right.
But like I said before, what does it mean to be a photographer? Like I'm like kind of cocky about the fact that I'm a photographer. I would feel if I wasn't teaching photography or taking photographs, I would feel a bit uncomfortable with whatever social media careers are out there.
What about AI? Like I'm interested to hear how you think AI will shape the future of photography. In my opinion, and my perspective on this is that the actual lived experience of something will never replicate. AI will never be able to replicate that. It will come close and look lifelike, but there will always be a sense through just human intuition that something is generated from AI.
I think you're wrong. I think we're all headed there. I'm happy that I'm not going to be alive to see us all become weird techno, half life, half computer things. But if anyone that's watching this has followed my social media, like I've been adamantly against AI and like have said and done things on my social media that I have never done before. Like I don't really talk about politics on my Instagram. I like to keep the things in my life that aren't about photography private to me. And AI, there was a magazine that, and I don't remember the name. I'm not even going to mention it. But anyways, there's a magazine that posted an AI photo. It's a fly fishing photo. And I think I wrote something like, this is a garbage post and you're a garbage magazine. Like, so mean, and they removed it. And the guy wrote me like, we've been working really, really hard. There's a lot of people that have contributed to this. And for you to just write that, it's so unkind. And I was kind of like, go to hell. You posted a digital illustration and you wanted everybody to believe that it was real. And so do I think that we can replicate imagery to look indistinguishable from real imagery? Yes. I think that if the marketing folks deem that people don't care whether it's real or not, like, we're all in big trouble for our careers. But as as somebody who is a bit more selective about their clients these days, living in a place where I have a lot less overhead, I realize that we actually have nothing to worry about as photographers, because AI can't take a picture. Yes, a robot can take a camera and photograph something, and then the robot could be a photographer. But actually, photography is one of the safest. And I'm not speaking about marketing. I'm not talking about advertising, but I'm just talking about what a photograph is. We're actually like we have one of the safest careers or safest, processes from AI than anything else.
You can automate the process of what the end product looks like, but you can't actually automate the process of clicking the button to take the photo.
Right. Like, a photograph is a document of something that is real. A digital, like, that's what I always say, is that an AI photo, it's an AI illustration. It's a lifelike illustration. It's not a photograph of anything. And so from an existential point, I feel quite calm now. And I'm shooting 8x10 film, and I'm building a dark room at our house to do large scale prints. And my reaction to AI is, how can I create a photograph that is void of any digital process? That's my existential answer to artificial intelligence. From a career perspective, I mean, like, I'm going to hang out here, and I'm here as long as y'all want to hire me. And I think my day rate's fair. And, but I, it is coming for us. I'm being long-winded. I'll say one more thing. I thought that AI was the problem, and actually the real problem is not AI, it's AI enhancement. And so there are a lot of young people who are very smart, and they are doing a water ad, and they're taking a kind of like subpar, front lit, very little understanding of how light works picture of a glass of water, and then they're using AI to enhance the photograph, basically like what you would pay a retoucher, $800, $2,000, $3,000, to produce an image that looks like a perfectly photographed, technically perfect image of a glass of water for a client. And so, is that an AI image, or is that a photograph that's been enhanced? That is the problem for us in the future. That's what's going to kill us, because it's AI enhanced. It's not AI taken. And people will feel okay with that. If I'm photographing a hotel room, there was never a ethical issue with me putting a little light in the window, right? So that the room looked a little bit more sunny. But now I'm wondering, like, is that ethically okay? Because every image is going to be perfect soon. And so if I rent a hotel room and it's really dingy and dark, but the price point is correct for the night, I'd like to have that information. I'd like to know, we're renting a kind of dark room, but we're in the center of the plaza. It's only $100 a night. Like, that's what I think the problem is. And I think that that's going to happen more and more and more. As an iPhone picture, AI enhancement, boom, ad campaign.
That brings up a good point about hotel rooms. That has me thinking, whenever I look at photography for hotel rooms on a website for a hotel, it all looks the same. It's always the same lighting, it makes it look a lot better. And I think that's a great point, that things will become, and they already have become more just digitally enhanced through the AI, AI process.
I mean, I made a career out of digitally enhancing things. You
Yeah.
know, that's like I said, it's rainy and you want it to look sunny, so you hire a photographer who understands light, and I make it look sunny. The AI is. I've just been thinking for the last few months. I've been thinking about, I don't know if it's a bumper sticker or if it's just a comment on an Instagram post, but there's this thought in my mind, and it's like, I don't fucking believe your digital photograph. I don't believe it's real. You know, I see it, and it's coming. It's in video too. It's like I see a picture on Instagram, and I'm like, I don't believe you.
Mm.
Prove it. Well, there's no opportunity to prove it anymore unless you show me a darkroom print from a negative that has not touched the computer. And this is something that I was obsessed with cameras when I was younger. I was always like Canon rumors, looking at what's the next Canon, the next Nikon, digital Leica. And I'm in this place now, and all AI has done to me is like, I don't believe you. I don't believe that this is real. Like, I want to know it's real. And like, how do we prove it's real? And really, it's film and in darkroom prints. That's the only way to know something's real. And if you're buying a print from a photographer who has even scanned the film and done an inkjet print, prove to me that you didn't, that this is a real sunset. This is a real photograph. Did you digitally enhance it with AI? Like, it doesn't even matter. It matters to me, you know?
I think it matters to a lot of people. I mean, I think it matters to brands that truly care about that stuff too. I mean, I don't see Patagonia ever using AI to have to recreate an experience because their brand values and their ethos is so rooted in what they do. And I think that's what makes a great photographer too, is someone who, I mean, you fly fish, you know this stuff, you know about food, you live this experience, and
Right.
you can't get that authenticity from AI. And that's where I think there's always going to be this discerning factor. Sure, we can, it's the same way we have Amazon now, right? We can get anything we want, but it's all, if you want something for cheap, you can get it. But most of the time it's crap if you're buying it from Amazon.
Yeah. But the world lives on crap, you know? I mean,
Yeah, and I think there's 100% the masses live on crap, right? But I think there's and it's true to what your portfolio shows, is that what you've produced throughout your career is not crap, and I think that has some long standing, that makes it feel like I have to have this. Now there might not be as many brands that want to flock to that, but the ones that do care about that will value that more over someone who has 100,000 Instagram followers.
well, I mean, this is the good news for us, is that it's just not here for it. It's not here yet, right?
Yeah.
It's not a postmortem. I mean, we're very much in a living, breathing industry, creating content, and so, you know, I used to think that it was 5 years away, and I think I'm going to finish out my career, uh, and I'm going to keep preaching this to people. Like, do you believe this? And does it matter? Like, do you want to believe it? Do you care if it's real? And like, that's really the question I'm going to ask everybody about everything, for that matter. You know, like, is where did you get that? Where did it come from? Does it matter to you where it came from? You know, and I think, though, that maybe we're closing down now. If I was to say anything about where we are as an industry, where the world is geopolitically, I would say that it's really important to not be evangelical about your opinions right now. I think that there are AI artists who are doing things that I look at and I am in love with it, and um, and there are folks that are decorating homes with cheap stuff and expensive stuff from Amazon, and they're doing an amazing job, and it inspires me. And so I don't think that my way is the right way, but I do think that this is the world that I live in. And if you want to come and hang out in here with me, I'm so excited that you're into it, that you're into the real photographs and real light and real people and real places. And my hope is that it will sell the thing you're making, you know?
Last question before we wrap up, like how has becoming a father uh, shaped the way that you live?
In my personal life or my professional life? Or both, I
Both.
guess.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that matters. Having a kid, it's the only thing that matters to me. I mean, it's um I was Will Hereford with these things, and Will Hereford from Charlottesville, Virginia, these clients, that's clients, lives here, does these things, and now it's Will Hereford, Edda's dad, and then everything is underneath that umbrella. So how has it shaped me personally? I'm excited that I live in a place where that there's not a 24-hour news cycle. I'm excited that I live in a place where we don't lock our doors. And from a professional standpoint, like I'm trying to slowly transition towards less pictures and more meaning behind the pictures that I take, whether they're personal photographs with my 8x10 camera or they're for a brand, and take less and use the time that we're not taking photographs to just talk about how lucky we can be, that we're in a beautiful place and a beautiful industry, and that there's a lot of optimism still. So that's how it's affected me. It's just a general understanding of time, how quickly it moves, and that I want to use it to make things that matter and not garbage.
It's awesome, man. Where can people find your work if they want to learn more about you?
I have my Instagram at William Hereford and my website, williamhereford.com. My agent is one of my closest friends. Her name is Liz Harris at ehmanagement.com. And then if you want to see cool stuff that I don't put on the internet, send me an email and I can share some of my personal work. I have not put any of my personal 8x10 work on the internet, and I don't really have plans to. So it's if you want to see it, you got to contact me, and then I can send you the work for purchase.
Well, you may be hearing from me for that, man. Thanks so much for coming on The Marketing Factor. Will, great to connect.
Thank you for having me. It means a lot.